All right, guys. Well, I had just, dude, the worst string of shit has happened over the last, 2 days again. I mean, it's just been man, my dad had a stroke this month, and then I've been having, really bad Wi-Fi issues. I had the guy come, and I got, a new box. So now I have a mesh box, if you know what that is. But basically, I went over to Mickey's yesterday, and I was going to do a live with him, but then his house was getting renovated. He's going to Mexico tomorrow with his wife, and they were like, why don't you guys just go to this local restaurant? So we ended up going to this restaurant right by his house. We walked over there. They didn't have Wi-Fi there, so I couldn't do a live with him. Then I come back home last night, and while I was with him, we recorded a bunch of stuff, because I'm writing a book about him. And my phone, ever since I broke my headphones and I lost the wire for my microphone. Remember, I used to record on the laptop. I've been having to record on my phone. The problem with that is that you always have to make space. So I can only kind of identify what video. I always do this when if I don't pre-record a video and then upload it there and then. This happens to me because I have to delete stuff to be able to upload it, and then I'm looking through it. I'm like, okay, I was wearing a black wife beater that day, so I delete. I have hundreds of videos of me talking because of the YouTube and Patreon stuff, and then I accidentally delete 2 videos that I've already done. So now I'm like, fuck. I'd done a new China, and I finished the Burning Man. I'm so bummed out about that because now I know I have to come home to record it. I get home last night and without going too much into what happened, let's just say it was a really bad night. This happened. I don't know if you can see that. This happened last night. Very bad things were going on here when I got home. I don't really want to put Karina's business out there. She wasn't cheating on me or anything, but it's just pretty much the worst thing you could imagine was happening besides her fucking someone. So then I had to deal with that all night, and then she kicked me out of here, and then I was in my car for most of the, anyway, dude, it doesn't really matter, it's not your problem, but I'm just fuck, it's all bad. My shit gets deleted, then I get home, and then whatever's going on with her, which I said I wouldn't tell people about, but just goddamn, man. I go out, I mean, I love Mickey and everything, he's my boy, but it's fucking work. I'm going out to hustle for our family. I'm trying to, I work my ass off to try to keep things going. And now I'm just going to have to start showing my asshole at OnlyFans. Dressed up like a mime. Paint my butthole white. And someone commented the other day, they're like, there's too much butt fucking in your videos. No, I'm like, first of all, there can never be too much butt fucking. But, one of the problems, too, is that I hurt my hand a couple months ago. Remember when I punched the refrigerator? It's pretty much back to normal. But I haven't been working out for 6 weeks. And, someone like me, I'm not on Suboxone anymore. I smoke herb once a night. I stop microdosing, all of it. I'm trying to stop smoking weed and just be totally sober again. One thing that I need to do is I need to work out, that's what keeps me sane. And I also just need to get in structure. So I know there was a couple days where, god damn. Well, I think it was just one day where I only uploaded one video. And I think that was for the $10 tier. I believe this is for the $10 tier as well. This is going to be another Florida story. So, I'm sorry. We got a few days left in the month. Let me try to just do nothing but do videos. Try to get the exclusive ones out. That's where we're at. I am going to do a new prison one though. I'm going to do this, the China, new prison. I'm going to finish Burning Man. And then I'll circle back and I'll do more, but I'll make it like worth it. You know, there'll be a bunch of exclusive videos right now at the end of the month. Let's just get into the fucking video. Sorry. I didn't even like need to try to warm up and tell jokes or whatever. I'm just having a bad day and, bad last few days, but you know what? Life goes on. So let's go. So where we were at last time. So I've been busted, in Florida, you know, pretty much I got set up for the whole Mike Virgin thing. One of the problems with spacing out the videos is I forget the chronology. I mean, it doesn't matter because I'm not making things up. Like, these things are really what happened to me. The one problem is that sometimes I repeat myself. So if that happens, I apologize. But just for a little recap, I went out to Florida to get sober. If you remember, I was crawling on the floor. I was like looking through gum wrappers because in my twacked out mind, I thought it was a mathematical certainty that somebody somewhere had dropped drugs. And if they dropped drugs, I was going to be the one to find it. I was like, I'll be that guy. Oh my God, a gram? Fuck yeah. I was just trying to play the odds, right? And then I had a breakdown. I was like, what am I doing? Oh my God, I've ruined my life. So I end up calling a rehab, talked to this nice black lady out in Florida, you know, and she's like, baby, I smoked crack for 30 years. Remember that lady? And so I end up going to Florida. Get out to Florida, and right away, I mean, I'm a kid. I'm like 20, I'm like 19 when I go out there, turn 20 out there. I'm basically running amok. You know, I'm leaving rehab with girls. I relapse pretty shortly after I get there. I'm doing heroin. I'm smoking crack. Got a lot of little adventures while I was out there. Remember when that girl tried to tell me that she was underage? And I think I was like 19. And that whole thing happened with her brother at the skate park. Like, you know, little stupid stuff like that was happening out there. But then the whole Mike Virgin thing went down, and that was... Sorry, I had a bad taste in my mouth. Saltine made it better. Saltine's been like on my desk for like fucking a year. It tastes so bad. It tastes like cardboard. It tastes exactly the way you'd think a saltine would taste. It's been like sitting on a desk for a year. Oxygen's just been like bloating it and, you know, stale. So, you know, the whole Mike Virgin thing goes down and I get set up. I mean, that's obvious. When I got arrested for that, one of the cops that arrested me was one of the cops that was coming over to Mike Virgin's house that was basically like a chomo fucking client of Mike Virgin's. And obviously they turned Megan against me. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because some of this stuff has to do with this particular story. But obviously Megan got turned out by them. Because she had us come pick her up. We go pick her up. And then we all get arrested. Remember, Lou's driving. He's fucked. He's like on the run for murder. He wants to hold court on the street. Thank God the gun was underneath his seat and he couldn't get it in time. I mean, at 20 years old, my whole outlook on life, I was still looking at everything like it was an adventure. You know, I mean, I think that's how one of the coping mechanisms I had back then is I'm like, oh, this is an adventure. You know, everything I do, okay, it's jail. Yeah, it's a horrible place, but it's still an adventure. It's something unique. And like I tried to make everything feel like I was like living in a movie or something. And I think my whole philosophy on life and trying to live that way is why my life kind of translated cinematically like that. Like these adventures I got in, a lot of times I kind of just went with the flow because I had no choice. I was like, I'm a loser. Fuck it. I'm just going to pretend like I'm a loser in a movie about being a loser, but the movie about being a loser is my life. And then things like this started happening. So anyway, so I ended up getting set up. I go out to West Palm. Well, first I'm at Gun Club. So Gun Club is the county jail in West Palm Beach. It's like a building. It's like a big building. It's like Twin Towers in LA. And that's where everybody has to go when you get processed into there. So anyway, right when I get there, I'm like one of the only white guys, right? We went into this. It's a bunch of Haitian guys. That Mad Dog, remember that guy? Oh, just tell me no. Oh, just tell me no. Oh, can I smoke a joint with you? No. Oh, no, just tell me no. And it's like, he was crazy looking. He had that brand on his arm. And I got beat up there a couple times. Then I end up going to the hole out there, and this dude asked me if he can give me a Hummer. I don't even know what that is. I think he's talking about a fucking car. I'm like, is it a V8? V12 Hummer? He's like, it's a BJ Hummer. I was like, I've never heard of that. He's like, I want to suck your dick. I'm like, and you know, so that whole thing happened. Then I go to court and they actually bring that up, you know, and I have to explain, and that's really demeaning, you know, like being in court and like basically I couldn't act like I was the aggressor in the situation, you know, I had to act like I was a victim, which I was. But it's like being a man. I know it really doesn't matter now because kids like, you know, wax their eyebrows and, you know, wear like yoga pants. You look at dude, like you see, you know, in Dumb and Dumber when they like see a couple walking, he's like, would you look at the ass on that? He's like, he must work out. That's really how it is now. You'll be like walking, you'll like see somebody, you'll be like, damn, look at that. Oh my God, it's a guy. And then you like play it off. You're like, yeah, gross. Whoa. Yeah, I hate gays. Kill them. You know, and that's like kind of the culture we're in because everyone's metrosexual. Everyone's kind of like turning into one. I mean, I don't know where you guys live, but in LA, it's like that. There's guys like fucking filing their nails. You're like, look at that queer. And then the guy's like, what? And he like gets up and just knocks you out, sucks you off. Like, yeah. Who's gay now? And you're like, oh my God. So like it's, you know, and of course some of that's an exaggeration, but the point is we're like living in a time where the male archetype of like this big tough guy and then like the female like little like, oh my God, you know, like the women that are kind of more submissive or whatever, they're kind of blending into one metrosexuality. What was the point of this? No idea what but back in that time, this was back in like 2003 or 2004, there was like very much that thing where if you were a man and you were like a victim, and I'm not saying I was a victim. I didn't get butt fucked. I didn't get my dick sucked. This guy just asked me if he could suck my dick. Point is it was very, very embarrassing because we were still in that moment of time where no matter what, you were looked down upon for just being in a situation like that. You know, it didn't matter if anything happened or not. Just the fact that now everybody's a victim. Now if you're not a victim, you're the bitch. You know, everybody's like, oh, poor me, you know, and that's just where we're at culturally. We're in a culture of victimization. So, you know, I've been beat up. I think the last video that we had talked about, I've been beat up like 3 times, right? And I don't know if I had mentioned this, but I know that, you know, I'd gone to the hole. The dude asked me if he could suck my dick. That all happened. Okay, and a lot of this more like why I externalize these things, just so I know where we're at, and then I can kind of like be from one point of the story to the next. Eventually, after I'd gotten out of the hole, they brought me back to the same unit. So they basically wanted to put me into protective custody, and I know we've talked about that. Like in my mind, that was it. If you went PC, you had no dick anymore. Your dick inverted. You know, it looked like some sort of Velcro pouch. You're like unvelcroing the pouch to pee. It's like trickling out. It's like, imagine pee being in an envelope and you're just squeezing it. That's what your cock's been reduced to. It doesn't work anymore. You're not boning chicks. You're not playing football. You're a bitch at that point. Can't go PC, right? In my mind, it'd been ingrained. And it's silly because I'm on the other side of the country. It doesn't matter. I could have gone PC and then just never told anyone. It's like your gay experience in college. Like, hey, dude, you should suck my dick. I swear to God, I'll think about a girl. And then, like, the dude sucks your dick, and you're like, ew! I'm never telling anyone about this. Good thing this happened in college. And then you're like, then that guy that I'm talking about goes on to be some corporate asshole, and he's, like, raping chicks because he's, like, all mad that he's, like, had a gay experience. I'm telling you facts. That's what's happening. I'm not saying I never even went to college. Wait. Didn't you do college correspondence classes when you were in Oxford? Well, wait. All right. Anyway. No, I've never been with a dude. I would tell you, though. I do like a whole video series. Time I got a dick sucked by a dude, but I haven't. I'm lame. Call me old-fashioned. I like vagina. I don't really like that word, though. It kind of sounds like vagina. I don't know. It sounds weird. I like pussy. Talk to Karina about this a lot. She doesn't like my other off names for it. Cooch, twat. She's like, those are gross. I'm like, what do you like? She's like, I like pussy. I'm like, oh my God, Jesus, you sound like a fucking... All right, anyway. So they end up, so I'm not going to PC. I'm not doing it. Nope. So they end up bringing me back to this unit again. So that's where we'll start the story. They end up bringing me back to this unit. And right as I'm walking in there, it's the same guys. You probably think this has happened over like a few months. This is happening over like a few days, right? Like everything in county jail, like it's like a day or two. You know, you go to the hole for like 2 days. You're like, no, not the hole, you know? It's not like when you get older and you go to prison, you go for months. So I end up going back and they're all looking at me. They're mad dogging me, including Mad Dog. Don't just tell me no, that guy. And, you know, I think it was like finally at the point where they're like, okay, like the dude has heart, you know? I don't know if I'd explained this in the other video, but this time when I went in there, I just didn't talk to anyone. I wasn't even scared. Like I'd been beat up a few times already, and it was at that point where I wasn't scared of it anymore. And that's the big thing. Like, you know, for people that haven't gotten in fights, you always kind of have this fear of the unknown. But once you get hit, you start getting tougher. It doesn't mean you're automatically good at fighting. It just means that you're tougher and you're less scared. And that's how I was. And I think that they could sense it on me. So I'm making my bed, and this kid, I don't know if you remember me, if I ever brought him up, but there was this guy, this black dude. He was like a magician, and like he like played basketball. I don't know. He's like the jack of all trades black guy. He's like, oh, I do magic. I shoot hoops. I make raps. It was like that guy. And he had horrible breath too. He didn't ever like claim that as one of his things, but that's one thing I remember about him. And, you know, another thing that, I'm a tattoo artist, you know? So we had made the pattern to do laugh now, cry later. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it for $80. So he wanted to do a pick and poke tattoo. So that means, you know, and this Nico that I have right here, that's pick and poke. Basically what you do is you get a staple, you flatten it out. So it's like, you know, it's like a line. Then you sharpen it into a needle. You put it, you like wrap it up in string so that it's like on this long, you know, it's like, it almost looks like a pen. And then you get like the lead from pencils. You scrape it off with a razor blade. You put it in a spoon, and you mix it with with shampoo, you know, and that makes the ink. And what you can do is you dip this little like pen thing that has the sharpened staple at the end. You put it in the pencil lead concoction that makes, you know, makeshift ink or whatever. And you can just start going like this, and the ink will stick, and it gives you a tattoo. Now that looks like a tattoo. The guy that had done that was a guy named Powder, and he was like pretty well-known tattoo artist. I think he was from Sacramento. I think he was a Sacromaniac, if I remember correctly. And he like worked at a shop. So he actually, I don't know if you can see it, he also did that. Then like that's pick and poke. So there's potential where those, this is pick and poke as well. That's like a shitty pick and poke. So you just dip it in, you poke it. So this jack of all trades magician guy had told me that he could give me a pick and poke tattoo. Now, I've been to Santa Barbara County Jail at this point, but I'd never been to like some grimy Southern County Jail. That's exactly what this is, West Palm Beach. It was grimy. Puerto Rican, Haitian, and the white dudes that were there were straight up like, the carny looking dudes. I wasn't even in a unit where there was a white guy, right? That's about to change. That's one of the points of this story as well. So when this jack of all trades black dude's telling me that he can give me a tattoo, I'm like really impressed by it. I've always been one of those guys that thought it was cool when you could like, you kind of like break the rules and do something cool. Like, yeah, man, I can give you a tattoo right here. I'm like, what? And at that time I only had the Fear and Loathing, and I had the Little Sun. The Little Sun I had like saved up when I was working at a telemarketing place when I lived in Delray Beach, and I got this for like $300, and probably one of the lamest tattoos I have. But anyway, so I was all excited about it. So he wanted to charge me like 80 or $90, you know, and then I got beat up a couple times. So now I'm back in there, and he comes and he talks to me, right? And he's telling me, he's like, man, he's like, Callie, you got heart. You got heart, man. That's my new nickname. They're calling me Callie. You know, they're like, I don't know too many white boys that would come into jail, get fucked off as many times as you, and then still have the balls to come back in here. It's like, I don't know if you're stupid or I don't know if you're brave. And I was just like, I just don't care. And I said, I'm not a bitch. I'm not going to go to PC. And he shook my hand. So you got to like understand the symbolism behind that. I had gotten beat up by like his homeboys, you know, he's a black dude. He hangs out with all the other black dudes in there. His friends had beat me up a bunch of times, a couple times, right? But pretty like severely. And now he's shaking hands with me and pretty much telling me that I'm okay because I have heart. And that's what happened. Like once he shook my hand, there was basically a truce, and like they were okay with me. You know, I don't care what anyone says. If you ever find yourself in a jail situation and you're like outside of your element, you're like in Florida, but you're from California, you don't really know how things work. One thing that's universal in jail and prison is if you have heart, everybody will respect you eventually. Maybe not right away, but if you get beat up and then you're like, fuck it, you're just gonna have to beat me up every time, right? If it's like that kind of thing, people will respect you. So if you ever get jumped like in a unit in a county jail, what I recommend doing is being like, all right, well, you guys are going to have to beat me up every day then, because I'm not going anywhere. Those kind of people you'll eventually earn those kind of people's respects. And that's what happened to me at this place. So this guy, I mean, he claimed that he respected me, but I think the bottom line was that he wanted to get that money from me. He wanted to charge me, I think it was like $80. Let's just say $80 for this. It would say cry now, or laugh now, cry later. And I used to have that. I've gotten those covered up since then. He's going to charge me like $80 for this like shitty tattoo that he wanted to give me. And I was all excited about that. So he may have told his friends like, hey, this white boy's a mark, leave him alone. Let me get $80 and we'll eat together. We'll eat this dude's commissary. So he agreed to it, and no one fucked with me past that point. You know, they were mad because that time that I smoked weed and I got the whole unit shaken down when they came in and raided it. But after I got beat up a couple times, and once this magician dude seemed like he was cool with me, they just left me alone. They started calling me Callie. So now around this time, I'd agreed to do the tattoo with the magician dude, and I called my uncle. I didn't have anybody's phone number, and I called him. Now, if you remember, my parents were on a cruise to Italy. My uncle was like the designated family member that was supposed to take care of me. So I called him, and basically, you know, he felt bad for me. I mean, no one wants to see their nephew in jail like that, you know, and he asked me if I needed anything, and I said I needed money. Now, I'd already made the deal with this magician dude, and I really think about that. Like, this guy was being nice to me because he thought that he was going to get money out of me. I hadn't even asked my uncle for the money yet. My uncle's not wanting to give it to me. It's like, I don't know. Your parents are in Italy, and they told me not to put any money on your books until they talk to you personally. I don't know if you guys saw the interview that my parents had done for my documentary. I put it up. I don't remember which tier, but it was on my dad's interview. And he was talking about how he was on that cruise and he had checked his email and he found out that I was in jail. So then he ended up talking to my uncle, and he told my uncle, I'd already been to Santa Barbara County Jail. So my dad knew that before long I was going to be asking my uncle if he could put money on my book. So he told him to hold off. Now this really freaked me out because I knew that one of the reasons they were letting me stay is because I was going to be getting tattoo work from the magician guy. So this became like a source of anxiety for me. And my uncle just flat out said no. Now, store day was in a week, right? And one thing that I learned early on about jail is that when you make a handshake deal like that with somebody, not for drugs, because drugs is different, because somebody actually has to give you something that costs them money usually, unless they were bringing it in themselves. But I'm talking about like for a tattoo situation, something like that. Way too hot out here. What I found in jail is after you make like a handshake deal, right? Like you've already agreed that you're going to do the tattoo. What ends up happening is the person that's going to tattoo you wants to tattoo you as quickly as possible because they want you to be indebted to them. Because when someone owes you money in jail, it's almost like having equity in a house, you know, like having money owed to you on paper is not just as good as money, but it's pretty good. You know, it's something that people definitely strive for because jail is an interesting situation. You know, in the free world, you owe somebody money and, you know, say you owe a bunch of collectors money, you know, you owe a bunch of credit card companies, gets to the point where you can't pay it. You just file for bankruptcy. In jail, you can do that too, but it's checking in or rolling it up and going PC, and you don't want to do that. So people know that if they make a handshake deal with you and you owe them money, there's a very good chance they're going to get that money. You know, and if they don't, then they have a reason to beat you up or beat you up with their friends. So they want to get you in debt as quickly as possible. So he makes this deal with me to get the tattoo. And then he's like, right after we make that deal, he's like kind of harassing me, wanting to get it done. Now, store's not coming up for a week. My uncle had already said that he wasn't going to put money on my books until I talked to my parents. My parents were on a cruise in Italy, like I said, so I didn't know when I was going to be able to talk to them. But I in my mind, in my paranoid mind, and I was probably right, these guys were leaving me alone because of the store that they thought was coming the next week. So when I called my uncle that first time and he told me that he wasn't going to send me anything until he talked to my parents, it freaked me out, you know, and I had to start exploring other options. Now, we talked about this when I first got busted in Florida, how when I was in the holding tank, I called like some of my ex-girlfriends that I had like when I was in high school. I like knew a couple landlines by heart. Now, for some of the younger viewers, you probably don't realize this. There was a period before cell phones where you actually had to have your friends' phone numbers memorized, the landlines, you know. Nowadays, you don't know anyone's phone. I don't even know Karina's phone number because all the numbers that I have are just automatically in my phone. Well, she just got a new number. That's why I don't know her number. I used to know it because I'd call her from prison, but I don't know her new number. So back then, you'd have all of these different landline phone numbers, you know, in your mind. Unfortunately, the numbers that I had memorized were like random people. You know, like kids that I was friends with when I was in 6th grade. Like I had their parents' landline numbers. So I just started calling those numbers because it was like, it felt like a wick was burning on a bomb. And the bomb was store day. And if I got to store day without that commissary coming, that, you know, who knows what was going to happen to me, but it was going to be bad. That's the thing you don't want to happen. You don't want people to think that you're of some sort of value. Like you're a mark, and then them figure out that you're worthless and that they're not going to get any money out of you, because now they're not just beating you up, they're beating you up with anger because they were expecting that shit to come. And I knew that I was in that situation. Even though I was 20 years old, I still had a pretty good understanding of how stuff like that worked. So I started freaking out and I started calling people that I used to hang out with in 6th grade's parents. And they'd pick up and they'd be like, hello, you know, and they'd be like, you have a collect call from Ryan, an inmate at a Florida state correctional facility. To accept charges, press 1. So like, you know, they'd pick up and they'd be like, Ryan? I'd be like, hey, Sue. You know, Sue was one person that I called in particular, was one of my friend's mom. She's like, Ryan, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm in jail and I'm getting extorted by black Haitians. And she's like, Ryan, I am a Democrat. That is racist. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, okay, I'm getting extorted by people that can beat me up. It doesn't matter what race they are. I was just explaining like what they look like. Maybe if I said Haitian, you know, you would have some understanding of what I was dealing with. I'm just some little 5'6" white boy, just completely out of my element. There's like these fucking really mean Haitian guys that go, "Oh, just tell me no." She hung up on me. I was like, fuck. So the next person I called was Mike Virgin's landline. I didn't know his cell phone number by heart, but I did know his landline. Now, if you remember from the story, from the Mike Virgin story, when Lou picked me up and he took me over to that house where it was like a bunch of black dudes and there was like one brunette girl and everybody was smoking crack and there was like that toothless chick that was like hitting on me. I had called Mike Virgin's landline and Megan had picked up the phone. And I had told her that I had dope, that I had a plane ticket back to LA, even though I didn't. I was just trying to get her out of there. It's the kind of thing, you know, typical drug addict shit. Like, hey, I'll tell you this and we'll figure it out tomorrow type thing. So I knew Mike Virgin's landline number by heart. So I end up calling the phone and some guy picks up. It's a guy that I didn't know. Now, Mike always had like a bunch of like kind of unsavory peripheral characters at his place as well. It was someone that I'd never talked to before. And I called collect. So the guy gets the call. You have a collect call from Ryan, an inmate at a Florida State Correctional Facility. So he picked up. He goes, hello? And I was like, hey man, this is Ryan Leone. And he goes, yeah, who's this? I'm like, hey, I used to live there. My girlfriend used to live there. He's like, oh, I know exactly who you are. You're the snitch. I'm like, the snitch? He's like, yeah, you're the snitch. He's like, we found out what you told the cops about us. Remember, I did tell the cops that there were a bunch of pedophiles, which I personally, to this day, I've been to prison now, and I've learned my lesson not to talk to police like that, especially not to, like, talk to police and give other names. Like, this last time that I got arrested for the pimping and pandering, I had a conversation with them. It's in my documentary. But back then, when I got arrested, what I was trying to say is that one of the cops that arrested me was part of some pedophile ring out there. Now, remember how I said that I found out things about the Epstein case that had some parallels with the Mike Virgin, with the whole Mike Virgin story. I might get to that in this video, but we're getting close to like where that parallel was drawn. But anyway, this guy starts talking to me, and I'm asking him if Megan's still there. You know, he calls me a snitch, and I'm like kind of explaining to him that I'm not a snitch, that I got arrested and I didn't say anything. But he's telling me that they were told that I tried to give up information about that house, which is true. But it wasn't like I was saying anything about drugs or anything. I was just saying that it was a pedophilia ring, which I personally don't think that is ratting. You know, I mean, I've been conditioned now not to talk to them, but back then I certainly didn't look at it that way. You know, and I don't know how I'd look at it right now. I mean, that's one thing that I feel, if I knew that there was like a pedophile engaged in pedophilia, if I didn't kill the person, if it didn't affect me personally or didn't affect my child, I think I could call the police and I don't think I'd have any issues with that. I don't think that that's necessarily snitching. You know, I think that that's the kind of thing that most people agree that the police should be involved with. So, you know, we talk about that for a little bit, how I'm a snitch. I mean, how do you have a conversation with someone about you being a snitch? Basically, I swore up and down that they had like the wrong information. So I'm asking if Megan's there, and he goes, yeah, Megan's here. And I go, well, can I talk to her? He goes, no, she's working for us now. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, you know what that means. She works for us now. Now he's laughing at me kind of like in an evil way, you know? He's like, you know what that means. She's working for us. You know, basically saying that she had become a hooker for them. And I go, is she fucking Mike? And he goes, yeah. I go, no, she's not. You know, I'm like crying, you know. I'm still like some simp ass dude where like, I like in my mind, even though I know that she ratted me out, like I still like think that we might like have a shot. You know, I'm like, well, you know, we'll just go to like couples counseling and I'll forgive her for telling on me and putting me in this horrible situation where Haitians wanted to beat me up every day. It's all good. Love's blind, man. You know, and that's how I was thinking. And so he's telling me that she's basically sleeping with Mike. And I don't believe it. It's like a dagger going in my heart. I'm like, no. You swear on your mom's life that Megan's fucking Mike? And he goes, no, man, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, come on, swear on your mom's life. That's how I know that you're full of shit, because you won't swear on your mom's life. And he's like, all right, man, swear on my mom's life that Megan is fucking Mike, that she doesn't give a shit about you, and then you're a fucking rat. And he hangs up on me. I remember that just like destroyed me at the time. You know, it was like, I was already like, I wasn't kicking anymore. So I've been in there a couple weeks, even though I had been doing methadone. So, you know, the kick was like a little longer than like a normal, just like straight up heroin, you know, 7 to 10 day kick. This was like more like 2 weeks of me kicking because there was some methadone in my system or whatever. But I was in the post-acute withdrawal state of that, where, you know, I was going through like a really bad depression. That's what happens after you kick heroin, or methadone, or any opiate for that matter. You know, you go through the physical withdrawal, which is incredibly brutal. And then you go through like this month of like gloom where you don't get a lot of sleep, you're sore, but you're really depressed. You're depressed all the time. So I called my uncle, he's not giving me the money. I called a couple random people, including Sue, my friend's mom back in Santa Barbara. She wouldn't give me, she hung up on me. She thought I was being racist is what she said, which is absurd. And then I'd called Mike Virgin's landline, I don't know, maybe hoping that Megan would pick up and I could explain to her that, you know, I was in a bad situation in jail. Basically, I was going to get beat up unless I got some money put on my books. You know, and there was a good chance that I would get the tattoo, I'd pay the magician dude off, and I'd get beat up anyway. But this is, you know, when you're in jail, a lot of it is clinging on to faith or hope, you know? So the magician dude is like really like bugging me to start the tattoo. He's like, you know, come on, man, I got a client list. He had no client. Nobody else was getting tattooed. Nobody else was a fucking mark like me. You know, and I don't remember what I was telling him, but I was telling him something like to the effect of, you know, that I was still kicking and I wanted to wait till I felt a little bit better to get the tattoo. But as I was explaining, people like that know once you make a handshake deal, the smartest play is to give me the tattoo and get me in debt as quickly as possible. So that's what ended up happening. So he ends up giving me the tattoo, and it really hurt. You know, it was like underneath my arm with a staple. That area is tender anyway. If you get like a normal tattoo there, it hurts. But when it's a sharpened staple, you're talking about like severe pain, right? And I remember he was laughing at me and his breath just stunk. So he ends up giving me the tattoo. It took probably, 10 hours. You know, him just picking, poking on my arm. Right after we finish, I go and I take a shower. I wash it off. As soon as I get out of the shower, they call me, like, Leone. And I look at the cop. He's like, hey, man, you're getting transferred. And I was like, all right. And I saw the magician. He was pissed off. And he's like, how you going to pay me? And I'm like, give me your information. I'll have someone put it on your books. And he's like, hey, man, I got people everywhere in this jail. If you burn me, you're going to get fucked off. I was like, all right. So the cop never left. I truly believe if the cop had like told me that it was time for me to pack my stuff and go somewhere else, and he had left, that they would have just beat me up for the hell of it, because they knew that they probably weren't going to get any money out of me. But the cop ended up staying in the unit the whole time, watching me pack my stuff. And it's not like I had a bunch of stuff. I had like pretty much nothing. You know, I just put my linen in a trash bag and I left after promising the magician that I'd be able to give him his money. So they end up bringing me to like a dormitory, right? So I was in a unit, but it was like, I don't know. I don't remember how many men, maybe like 50 at the most. I don't even think that many, maybe 40, something like that. They end up bringing me to a dormitory with at least 150 men in it. Huge barracks. Now, there are some white people there, you know, at this point. So I'm just relieved to get out of there, and I'm relieved that there's actually people of my own race, even though Florida isn't as racially separated as California jails are. There's still that kind of security when you get into like a big dormitory setting and you see people of your own race, because you kind of know that no matter what, you automatically have something in common with them if the only thing is just being white. So I get in there and a couple white dudes come up to me. Now, one of them that comes up to me is this guy named Josh. And he's like a tattoo artist. He's covered in tattoos. He's my age. White kid, heroin addict, been in and out of the Florida jail and prison system quite a bit. So he came up and started talking to me. Him and I hit it off right away. So him and I become friends. The other white guys were kind of like more off-putting. Now, the whole time I'm in there, I'm in there for a few days now, and I'm basically just keeping to myself. I'm like laying on my bed. My dad had my uncle order me some books. I remember Train Spotting was one of the books that got sent in. So I would like stay in my bunk and I would read them because my uncle ordered me some off Amazon. And I remember thinking that any day now there was going to be, a kite that would come through and it would say that I owed money in this other unit. You never want to be in a jail situation where you owe money in one unit and then you go to another unit, because there's ways to get kites to those units and let them know that they left, owing money. I was still relatively green at that period of my life, but I knew that owing money somewhere else was a bad thing. So then I meet this guy named Jimmy. Jimmy's like this white guy. He's bald. He looks very sick, He just has like this like pale corpse look to him. I don't really know how to describe him, but he's like white and he has like these like black sun blister marks all over him. Just looks sickly. He looks like what I'd imagine Freddy Krueger looked like before he got burned. Well, and he didn't have like a glove with like knives as fingers, but he had like that real like beat up leathery like Florida Freddy Krueger face look. And right off the bat, I didn't like the guy. From New York, he always was like really snotty. There's always like snot in his nose. He'd always like go like that, and like there'd be like a streak of snot on his arm, whatever. And he was just one of those guys that was a mooch, Now, I didn't have anything at the time yet. I hadn't gone to store. But this other guy, Josh, had given me like a big bag of, like, he gave me a bunch of tea. He gave me some chips. He gave me some soups. He's like, hey, just get me back when your store comes. He was cool. And him and I actually ended up becoming pretty good friends after this, but it's not really the point of the story. One of the things that he had given me, though, was this tea, right? So this guy, Jimmy, the sickly Freddy Krueger looking dude, came up to me and he asked me if I could get some of the tea. I forget what kind of tea it was. It was like, I don't know. It was iced tea. It was like flavor iced tea packs or whatever. So I gave him one of them. I don't really like iced tea anyway. And he drank it. Now, at this particular place, and that tea does have importance. That's the reason I'm bringing it up. At this particular place, they had group showers. Now, these group showers were nuts. Like 100 men would shower at the same time. And they had what's called rape towers in them. So they had these like big, it looked like gun towers, but they were up. This is at the West Palm Beach County Stockade. It was like gun towers that were in the showers. So the guards would stand there and they'd have guns like slung over their shoulders and they would watch us shower. Sometimes female cops. Now, some of these Haitian dudes would be scrubbing themselves, and I'd go in there and I'd be showering and I'm not looking at anyone. I'm just kind of like putting my head, I'm probably still in that point of my life where I'm like holding my dick with one hand and like scrubbing my asshole over and over and over again, and like looking around a little bit and like seeing if anybody's looking at me. And then when I think people aren't looking, I take my hand off my dick and like maybe like rub my chest and then go right back to holding my dick, that kind of thing, because I have a small dick and I'm self-conscious, especially when you're in a group shower with a bunch of black dudes. You're like, fuck, everyone's dick's like that long. They look like machetes and like third arms and shit. And so what these black dudes would do is they'd lather themselves up. They'd be like lathering themselves up. Then they'd get a bar of soap. They'd throw it up at the gun tower when there's a female cop and she'd like flash her flashlight down, and then they just spin around all lathered up and just start beating off, gunning them down. They'd be like, hey! And then the siren would go off. They'd come down, they'd spray us. We'd all fall down on the floor because mace like takes your breath away, right? And I remember like this happened, I don't know, a handful of times where dudes would be these like black dudes would be lathering themselves up, and then they just spin around and they'd have like this like sudsy like baton looking cock, right? And like you'd hear on the PA, they'd be like, hey, get down, and they'd just be like beating off, looking at the chick, and the chick would be like flashing her flashlight on them. Then they'd spray us and we'd all have to get on the ground, and I remember there'd be like these like big clumpy pubes, and they'd like be stuck on my like lips, and I'd be like, it was like being in a nightmare. Felt like I was in some like Scared Straight after school special, right? So I dreaded going to the shower because that happened more than once, and every time we'd get maced, the siren would go off, they'd come mace us, and then they'd come and they'd like zip tie the dude that gunned the chick down, and he'd be like all covered in soap, and he'd be like, and he'd like be zip tied, and he'd have like a big boner. I mean, these are images that you can't really shake. You know, this is shit that I was seeing when I was 20 years old. And so I remember this one time I was showering, and I go back, and Jimmy was kind of like snooping around my bunk. And I was like, hey man, what are you doing? He's like, oh, nothing. Can I have some tea? And I was like, well, yeah, were you just going to take some? He's like, no, I wouldn't do that. So I gave him one. So that guy, Josh, that had given me the tea comes up to me and he goes, hey, don't give that guy any tea. He's like, I gave him some of my tea once, and now this dude's a fucking mooch, and he's getting heavy. He's always wanting stuff. He's like, and the dude's got AIDS. He's like, just so you know. I was like, well, why would you tell me that? He's like, I don't know, like, if you like to get off or whatever. Get off? What do you mean by that? He's like, you know, have sex. I was like, oh, dude, hell no. I was like, you're not like that, are you? He's like, nah. I'm just saying that dude's got AIDS. Verified. And I was like, how do you know that? He's like, because he gets the Ensure drinks. You know, these like fortified protein drinks that he would get at Pill Line. He goes, only people that have HIV get those. And he's like, that guy, look at him. Looks like he has full-blown AIDS. I'm like, okay. And I don't know why him telling me he's HIV positive or have AIDS would make me not want to, you know, give him iced tea or whatever. But he had just mentioned that to me. So anyway, the first time that he was kind of snooping around, I had just gotten out of the shower. The second time, I was beating off. And the way that it would work there, where you would beat off is in the bathroom where the showers are. There's like these bathroom stalls, but they don't have like doors, you know, like most bathroom stalls, like you go to like a public restroom, there's a stall door. It's not how it is when you're in jail. They're all just open. They're like these little cubby places where you shit. And guys would set up tents with, you know, with sheets. See, like there'd be a sheet covering the entrance, then you're by yourself, and people would just beat off in there. And Josh had a bunch of like back then you could get porn magazines. So he had a bunch of like Penthouses and Hustlers and shit. So he'd just give me a stack of them, and I'd take them to the bathroom stall, put up the sheet, and I just get it. A couple times I was doing it. I've never been like good at tying knots, or I'm not very crafty. I'm not like a man's man like that. You know, I always like half-ass do knots. And I remember one time I was just beating off. I had the Penthouse, and I'm looking at the spread or whatever, and the sheet just went down because I didn't tie it correctly. And I'm sitting there and I just have my dick in my hand, and like somebody's looking at me and they're just like, ew, bro, put your tent back up. And I was just like, or I just, you know, put it back up. I remember that happened to me one time. But this particular time I was in there, I was beating off, and I finished, and it was disgusting too, because like, you know, you'd get up and you do the old thing where like you're jerking off, then right when you're about to come, you like get up and you like kind of like turn around and aim towards the toilet bowl. Well, so many people do this same play that there's just this like compilation of different like, you know, rashes of dried jizz all over this metallic toilet. So it almost looks like toothpaste, but you know what it is. It's just a bunch of these like big clumpy, like solidified jizz statues or whatever. It was disgusting. So right when you're about to nut, you're looking at this badass lesbian spread or something. Like, yeah. And then you're like just about to do it. And the last image that you see before you come is a bunch of other, like crusty jizz rashes all over the toilet. It was so gross. Ugh. Just details that I remember. So I finished beating off that particular time. And I go back to my bunk. Now, they had these, like, little plastic, I don't know, these little, like, plastic boxes that people would put their belongings in. That's where my stuff is. I only had, like, maybe one soup, and I had, like, the biggest thing that I had was, like, this box of, like, iced teas. I see Jimmy on his knees underneath my bunk looking through my little plastic box. Now, I just beat off, right? I walk up to him, I'm like, hey, man, what are you doing? And he just gets up. He's like, nothing. I left a book here. I'm like, you left a book in my property box? He's like, what's up? You trying to do something? And I was like, I'm definitely not trying to have sex, if that's what you mean. He's like, oh, what, you think because I have AIDS that you can talk to me like that? You think I'm some fucking fag or something? And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I do. So what? And I'm not fighting you because you have HIV, bro. I don't want to get your HIV blood on me. So, oh, fuck that. And he just comes up to me and he hits me right in the stomach. Like, he didn't hit me in the face. He gave me like a nice one in my stomach, and I'm just like, it took the wind out of me. I'm like, and I fell onto the ground. Now he jumps on top of me and starts hitting me on the back of the head. I did not expect any of this to happen. When we start wrestling a little bit, the dude comes up to me we're like wrestling, we're like rolling around on the ground. A crowd of people is forming. He comes up to my neck and just bites it, starts giving me like a fat hickey, but like not like a loving tender hickey, like there's blood coming off my neck, and I'm just like, this freaks me out, right? It probably gives me like a little surge of strength, and I'm just like, because I'm like thinking about how he's got HIV, right? And I just like somehow like wiggle my way out of it. Now at the time I'm like 130 pounds, maybe 135, because I've been in jail for a little bit, so I'm getting a little fatter. And I remember I just like had enough strength where I wiggled my way out of it, and I like put my hands up to box him, and then the cops were coming, so it just got broken up. We never got caught fighting. But now I have this huge bite mark on my neck. Like, he took out a piece of skin right here. And in my mind, I start freaking the fuck out. I'm like, man, I for sure have it. I got the ninja. And I'd go up to Josh, I'd be like, hey man, do you think I have AIDS? He's like, do you have a headache? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you do. I was like, no, what should I do? And he's like, you got to put in to get tested, man. Tell him that you may have been exposed. I didn't even like the way that was worded, that I might be exposed. So I didn't want to do it, right? And Josh would get me a medical slip. He like filled it out for me, and he's like, you just got to sign it right here and I'll put it in the little mailbox. I'm like, I'm not doing that. He's like, all right. So I never ended up signing it. Maybe like a few days later, Jimmy and I weren't talking at that point after we fought. I mean, I was pissed off. I had this huge scab right here where he had bit off a piece of my neck. One day they call me for medical. And I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck? And I'm walking away, and Josh is like, I signed and I put it in the box for you. Good luck, brother. Hope you don't have AIDS. He's saying it loud, and like everybody's laughing at me, right? So I'm completely nervous about this. Like the whole time that the cop is escorting me to the medical corridors, the infirmary, the same place that I went the couple times that I'd been beat up. In my mind, I'm tripping because I'm thinking that I'm going to find out that I have AIDS. I think for sure. I mean, this guy bit a fucking chunk of my neck out. So the cop ends up bringing me to this like waiting room in the infirmary. I'm sitting in there, and there's like a couple other guys in there. I don't know. Then there's like a heavy-set white dude. I think there was a black dude with dreadlocks, like a younger guy, probably like my age. We're sitting in there, and all of a sudden the door opens, and it's the magician dude that I owe money to. He's one of the other people that's like waiting to be seen in the medical. And remember, I hadn't paid this guy. And I made no effort to. I never put money on his books, nothing like that. I kind of just hoped that it would go away by itself. But he walks in, he takes one look at me, and you can just see the anger in his eyes. You know, I already knew that what was going to happen. And I kind of like, you know, there were like little arms on the chair that I was sitting on, and I kind of just like squeeze onto them, like ready to leap up, you know, as he's walking up to me. And we'll get into what happens in the rest of this series, the next installment of the Florida series. Thank you guys for watching. And now I have to redo China for the second time, by the way, for the $20 tier. Thank you guys, though. I appreciate you. I'm going to make an effort to make up for the days that I slacked this month. It was just a bunch of personal shit. But whatever. You know, I feel good now. This is a good warm-up video. I'm going to do another one. All right, guys. Palabra.